What's up, familia? This is Kevin Orosz, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about the law of polarity, which is a natural law, a physical law, a metaphysical law, a cause and effect system that's operating in your life, in my life, in the physical universe, and how we can leverage it and use it in intimate relationships and in our own mind-body system to better master our reality. So, what is polarity? Polarity is the powerful energetic that's formed between things of opposite poles. So whether that's a man and a woman, whether that's the positive or negative forces in a situation, whether that's the thought of excitement, the feeling of passion, or the thought of despair, the feeling of depression. Or if it's simply two opposing viewpoints, two opposing schools of thought, two opposing ethics or metaphysics. The law of polarity acts on these things. And so I'm taking a lot of this information from my own experiences of applying in my life from the laws of hermetics, from the book of Thoth, from natural law as I understand it, which it's been given a lot of different names, but I really resonate with the concept of polarity. So in life, when you have a lot of polarity, you have a lot of potential energy. Like when a magnet is attracted and really just and just has that electromagnetic charge, there's a lot of potential energy in that because the opposite poles generate this arc of tension, and it's an intense repulsion or an intense attraction, and both are powerful, and you can work with this law in your own life. And the way you're going to do that is understand that the thing that you hate the most has the most potential to be loved. The thing you are least aware of has the most potential to awaken your awareness and perception. And the things that trigger you the most and rile you up the most and create the biggest emotional reaction are the places where you are least aware of yourself. And something that comes to mind here is like the shadow or the parts of our psyche and our heart that we're not aware of. The law of polarity acts on this too, by helping us see that what we're attracted to or what we're repulsed by is a guide point and a compass to what's actually going to level us up and help us grow. And you don't have to take my word on any of this. These are natural laws or metaphysical laws, and they're meant to be experienced. So I would invite you to do the experiment or the exercise yourself in your own life, with your relationships, with your mind and body, with your thoughts and feelings, because nothing I'm saying will make sense until you do that. It will just sound like I'm just blowing hot air into this camera, on this microphone, on this phone, when actually this is a way to talk about concepts that are esoteric that can be applied in your life. Here's an example of the law of polarity, or the pendulum of swinging emotion, right? And a lot of people post about this every time there's a retrograde or like whatever planet's in retrograde. Mercury's in retrograde right now, or there's a big solar eclipse, which there was last week, or a new moon or full moon. A lot of people talking about huge emotional bursts. Either they go into manic energy and get super creative, downloads inspiration, new coaching packages, new courses, new artwork, new music, or they go into a cave and it's like emotional intensity or sadness, depression, fatigue, like mind-body like upheaval. These are examples of polarities. And as a human being, we naturally are swinging in between the polarities. Some of us stay on one end, but most of us are traveling in between them most of the time, sometimes quite intensely. Sometimes it's too subtle to notice because the polar charge isn't that high. So something really, really powerful and interesting about polarity is that the only thing you need to shift your polarity, say you're in a negative polar state, emotionally you're in a negative state, mentally you're in a negative place. The only thing you need to shift your state and start the chain reaction that works with this law is to take one positive action in the opposite direction. So with thought, you can do that with meditation and controlling the negative thoughts and creating one positive thought. And you'll start to shift the polarity and the magnetism the other way. Now, When you do this with emotion, it's a little more difficult because emotions can be really intense and have a life of their own. But if you're experiencing a negative emotional state, you have to call to mind those things and actions which create positive emotional states. And you have an option. You can either ride the emotional state all the way to the negative polarity and let it max out, and then you'll naturally be guided back to the positive, because that's just equilibrium. All things in life are seeking equilibrium and balance by nature, including the human being. Or you can take action and step into a positive emotional state by rituals, practices, breathwork, meditation, gratitude, self-care, massage, pleasure, play, dance, singing. There's a lot of different ways, and a lot of these work for me. Yours will be different. That'll put you back into a positive emotional state and actually work with this law of polarity, because if you just pull the magnets away from each other, they don't attract. And if you push the magnets really close and they're the same pole, they'll repulse. So you can think about electromagnetism as the way your mind, emotions, and body work, because you are no different. You are a being existing in the physical nature of the world and the metaphysical nature of the world. And so there's much more to this reality than meets the eye. And the cause and effect that was taught to us in school, what I call Muggle school, unless you went to a superhero X-Men academy or a super alternative school, what we were taught in our science classes and our psychology classes and our political science classes about the way the universe works and how cause and effect works is really incomplete. It's only a small piece of the puzzle. And so natural law is something that just really resonates with me on a deep level, because it helps me get that 10,000 foot view above reality and above my actions to see what's actually happening in reality versus what I want to happen. And so you got to realize that these natural laws are working all the time. And if you think you can escape them, or you're thinking, Kevin, this is woo-woo, this is bullshit, what are you even talking about? And I'll admit, it's a bit abstract. And I'm attempting to give you concrete examples right now. But what you got to realize is that this law is active, and it doesn't need you to believe in it or not. And again, you can find out this for yourself by testing it. So I want to talk about polarity with its probably most powerful application and most potent, sexy, creative, magnetic application. And that's the polarity in romance, the sexual charge, the romantic charge, the polarity that exists between the male and female energies, and between men and women, obviously. But obviously it also exists between men and men and women and women. People ask me this all the time. I don't know why it's so confusing. For me, it just kind of is intuitive that we all have a positive and negative pole, a masculine and feminine charge. So therefore, any two humans can combine in that way as long as they're polarized. So anyway, anyone who's asking that question for the 100th time, I imagine that can, with some of your own thought, make sense if you take it to its extreme. Anyway, in sexual polarity, in the polar attraction, what you have to realize is that if you're a man, like I'm a man, so I'm having a masculine experience, if I'm super polarized into masculinity, I'm very logical, I'm decisive, I'm rational, I'm embodied, I'm grounded, I'm using my mind to navigate reality. I'm using the qualities of myself that make me feel most powerful, grounded in my king, in my masculine, in my warrior, whatever name you want to give it. There's all kinds of archetypes you can play with. Then I'm going to have the best energetics and the best chance of being drawn to and activated by a woman who is the most feminine, who's in her feelings, who's emotional, who's embodied and sexy, who's grounded in pleasure and play, who's grounded in intuition and relationships and that kind of field. And that arc of electricity will create a very intense attraction. And this can happen on subtle layers with language and thoughts and emotions. It can happen on more overt layers by being asked out on a date or having, someone look you up and down because they think you're physically attractive. There's layers to this. And so really the application here I want to give to y'all is the law of polarity works best if you own your polarity and take action towards it. So if you're a man and you want to attract a very feminine woman and a super sensual, sexual, Shakti woman, and you're looking to be in a relationship, you don't want to cultivate the opposite polarity of that all the time and forget that you actually have that as your natural state and you don't need to come out of it. So what do I mean by that? Like, if you want to magnetize a feminine woman, you need to be a masculine man. And a lot of men think they're masculine, but they're attracting the opposite woman. I was even doing this at a time when I was more in my yogi days, because I was actually holding more of a feminine energy. Doesn't mean I wasn't still masculine and a man, but my energetic was very like intuition, flow, feeling. I wasn't being super rational or logical. I wasn't being embodied in a way that would attract a woman like that. And so there's a way that, women do this too, I imagine, and I've coached these women. I've also been in a relationship with these women where they actually feel really feminine and think they're really feminine, but they're actually cultivating masculine qualities. So they're being really decisive. They're making all these decisions from logic and rationality. They're doing business and they're hustling and they're using their mind instead of their heart or their womb to navigate reality. And therefore they're not attracting masculine men. And this is the number one question I get asked by women in coaching, actually. So I want y'all to really hear that. The law of polarity can only work for you if you choose a polar side and lean into it. That doesn't mean you're in it forever. So people that are like, but Kevin, isn't life full of both? Why can't you have both? What about both? It's like, yeah, you can have both, but if you try to hold both charges equally, you're neutralized. And if you're neutralized, you don't have any attraction. You don't have any polarity. So this is really important to understand, is that if you don't choose a polarity and commit to it, at least for a time, you're going to end up neutralized like the neutron in the atom and actually not have a charge and not attract the things you want. And this works for money and relationships. This works for your body and your physical appearance and training and wellness. It also works for your mind and your thoughts and your mood. And so this is really important to understand, is that the law of polarity is working. So you can either work with it and consciously choose which polarity you're going to be in, or guess what? It's going to choose for you. Because your emotions and your hindbrain and your amygdala and your pons and your neural circuitry, these are the lower parts of the brain, they're older, are going to act in this way regardless, because they're responding to the environment 9,000 times faster than you, because it's programmed into your subconscious. So the law of polarity is going to work whether you like it or not. The choice here is, do you want to consciously relate to it? And so if I'm a man and getting overwhelmed and I'm getting sucked into a negative emotional state or a negative polarity, the negative pole, which can be seen as feminine, and I don't mean negative as in bad, I mean as in receptive, like the negative pulls in, the positive pushes, and I'm trying to be in my masculine and be like full, like go hard, like hustle, just make it happen, that's when you're going to experience resistance and a lot of suffering. That's when stress and cortisol and inflammation and depression and overwhelm and breakdown are going to happen. And so, same thing from a woman. If your body wants to go into masculine and wants to go into mission, and your mind wants to go into creation and focus, but you're trying to be full feminine in that moment, and you're trying to be full emotional and full intuitional, you're going to experience that overwhelm where life's not in control and you don't have boundaries or time structures. You don't have money or access to resources maybe, because you're resisting the law of polarity. And so I really invite you to see the ways that polarity is working in your life, how it's working for your money, for your bank account, your career, how it's working in your relating. It's probably the most obvious place is in your sexual relationships, in your intimate relationships. And I would invite you to check yourself and find out what that's like, because when you consciously choose the polarity and lean into it and feel it and go all in, that's when it's the most powerful, and that's when you're magnetic, and that's when you look at a man or look at a woman and you're like, damn, they're crushing it, they're magnetically attracting me and I don't even know why. Well, this is why. They're aligned with that pendulum swing in the law of polarity. They're not resisting it. They're going with it and consciously manipulating it and surrendering to it. It's a paradox, to let life live through them. So this has been the law of polarity. I'm so glad that you're here listening, share this video. If you're vibing with me on natural law, tag somebody who could hear this or who maybe could learn something about polarity and how it's actually a very powerful factor. It can be neutralized or magnetized at your will if you will only choose your thoughts and feelings and take ownership of them. By the way, I'm hosting a retreat where we're going to dial in all of this and more in a golden temple of flow state experimentation. We're going to go into my top practices, biohacks, meditations, tantric and bioenergetic techniques in Costa Rica this October. It's called the Temple of Flow. I would love for y'all to apply to that if you are ready to join my first solo retreat and go all in with me. Also, a lot of natural law, a lot of systems thinking on neurocircuitry is in my upcoming course, Flow State Mastery. It's my first online course, 6 weeks that you can take at home of my top practices, techniques, and biohacks to kickstart your morning routine and own your reality through natural law, through the mind-body system. You can find that at flowstatemastery.com. You can apply to my retreat at kevinoros.com/flowretreat. Appreciate y'all, fam. Until next time, signing off from Ubudiyah.